Welcome back, my students, to a brand new episode of Comic Class. In today's lesson, guys, we're looking at Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 25, captured by J. Jonah Jameson. This is a pretty interesting issue. This is the introduction, I believe, to Smythe, who is the one that makes the SpiderSlayers. Now, I don't know if this one is called a SpiderSlayer, or if that comes later, but SpiderSlayers are pretty iconic. They were probably most, recognized from the Spider-Man the Animated Series from the 1990s. But yeah. But without further ado, I think we should jump right into today's story, and yeah, let's go. Real quick, guys, if you want to help me get more videos out faster, you can donate to the channel at the Cash App down below. This helps me treat these videos more like a job and will help the channel and videos to grow and come out more often. I appreciate anyone who donates or doesn't donate, and don't feel like you have to be a fan of the channel. You can still show your support by liking and commenting on the video, and with that out of the way, hope you enjoyed the video. So this story basically starts off with Peter basically trying to take pictures and sell them to J. Jonah Jameson. Eventually, we get to see that there's a dude that shows up that basically says that he has a way to defeat Spider-Man. And, Jonah basically doesn't want to have anything to do with scientists because of what happened with the Scorpion recently. And Peter basically uses his talking skills to basically get Jonah to at least look at what the doctor is selling, and it turns out to be this this machine basically that has these tentacles that come out of it, similar to Dr. Octopus. And Betty is basically trying to get Peter to not let Jonah Jameson basically see what this thing can do, because she already knows that he'll probably go for it. And he basically gets a demonstration by Smythe, where Smythe uses the machine to basically entangle Peter, and to their knowledge, they think Peter is just a normal human, but Peter's actually trying to use his spider strength. He's still not able to break through these tentacles, which is going to be pretty dangerous in a future encounter if he does have one. Now, once he's freed, Jonah basically says that he's impressed with the machinery and he's going to want to use it after all to capture Spider-Man and unmask him. And Betty and Peter basically get in an argument because she believed that Peter was better than turning on someone like Spider-Man that's always been there to save him and her. And it's pretty interesting. Eventually, Flash and Peter, and I guess this is the next day, basically Flash tells Peter that he wants to have a fight with them, and Peter basically isn't hearing anything of that because he's too worried about, this SpiderSlayer thing. And eventually J. Jonah Jameson takes control of this SpiderSlayer machinery, and he goes off to try to find where Spider-Man's at. And Peter basically makes a run for it once school is done because he has no time for the battle or fight with Flash Thompson. And Liz basically gets mad at him, claiming that he's going to try to beat up Peter. So Peter basically makes his way out from all of his friends and classmates and gets into his Spider-Man costume. This is where we get a confrontation between the SpiderSlayer machinery versus Spider-Man, and it's a really cool action sequence. We get to see Spider-Man try to use all different types of things against it. Eventually, he's trying not to get entangled by the tentacles that the machine is able to do, and after a few attempts, he basically tries to run and try to think of a strategy to take the machinery out. And J. Jonah Jameson basically is happy to see that Spider-Man basically can't do anything to this. Eventually, Betty tries to get the machine to stop working by unplugging it from the wall, cutting off its electricity, but J. Jonah Jameson basically kicks her out and tells her to take the rest of the day off without pay, of course. And Betty tries to get in contact with Peter. We get this little subplot where Betty and Liz basically go to Peter's house, and they're met with Aunt May, who says that Mary Jane Watson basically is there, and we get to see her face basically covered in that, so they're keeping that a surprise for a future issue. But she does seem like a threat to Liz and Betty, basically saying that she looks like a screen star. which I guess is what they called movie stars back then in the 60s. But yeah, so basically we cut back to the fight, and Peter eventually is captured by this machine. And it looks like this is going to be the unmasking, and Peter basically comes up with the idea once J. Jonah Jameson leaves the machine to go unmask Spider-Man himself physically, in person with Smythe. Peter sees this as opportunity. It basically breaks to the circuitry of the machine and basically takes out its innards or something like that. And when J. Jonah Jameson and Smythe basically arrive, they basically unmask an unmanned costume, and there's nobody in the costume. Instead, Spider-Man's using his webbing to basically make it seem like he was still struggling. The costume was struggling against the machine, and it was pretty funny. It's a funny scene, and it shows how smart Spider-Man is sometimes and creative he can be with his webbing. And he basically takes pictures of this situation just for his personal collection, so he can be, happy when he sees it. And we get to see that Mary Jane basically leaves Aunt May's house, and we still see her face basically, covered or looking the other way. So they basically, keep that a surprise, and Flash basically sees Mary Jane and wonders if she knows where Peter's at. So it's pretty cool. And eventually, a guard or a police officer basically tells Flash he has to leave the property because he's getting people thinking that he's looking suspicious. So their fight basically will wait for another day, or their confrontation will wait for another day. And Peter eventually arrives after his fight with the SpiderSlayer machinery and tells Aunt May that he's sorry that he was late, and that he was sorry that he didn't get to meet Mary Jane Watson after all. But it turns out that Aunt May's more mad that she found a Spider-Man costume in his behind his dresser or something like that. He was behind the bookcase, and Peter basically comes up with the excuse that he was going to use it to kind of pull a prank or something on his friends or classmates. And Aunt May basically just tells him that she's going to put it away and not for him to, do something like that. It just could be very dangerous. And the issue ends with Peter just contemplating how close that actually was, how bad it would actually be for someone in her age to basically get a shot that her nephew is actually Spider-Man. And that's how the issue ends. And overall, it was a really good issue. And yeah, that was Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's The Amazing Spider-Man issue 25. Captured by J. Jonah Jameson. Overall, really solid issue. Probably was my favorite out of the three that we're reviewing this week. Overall, like I say in almost every issue review for this run, Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's run is it's definitely one of the most legendary runs. Every issue is very consistent, and shows when two people like Stan Lee and Steve Ditko work together can achieve really great storytelling. And the ideas they had were just crazy. And this is, something like this, like an issue like this with this first prototype SpiderSlayer, shows that writers took this concept and they evolved it in the future and gave us the SpiderSlayers that we kind of recognize from the 1990s TV show, the cartoon show. And yeah, so I think that's really cool, and it's cool to see that the basis for all these great ideas in the future and how they evolve over time in either comics or other mediums in general, like TV or movies and stuff like that, or games. But that's gonna be all, guys. Make sure you go check out the playlist for the Amazing Spider-Man Steve Ditko Stan Lee run. We have already covered 25 issues plus Amazing Fantasy number 15, so 26 videos in total. That's a lot to watch. I recommend you go check that out, and as we're going to be getting closer to finishing off this run in probably the next 2 to 3 weeks. But that's going to be all, guys. Until next video, God bless you. Until next listen, keep on reading those comments.